I just want to remind you guys that we broke up March 15th, and the reason for the breakup was I simply wanted to call off the wedding because he wanted to go to DreamCon, and I thought that we could still be engaged and maybe go on the trip together and not worried about a wedding. But instead, he decided to cuss me out, and my parents overheard, and that's why my dad also cussed him out because I was very sad and upset, and I could not respond to him due to the fact that I was being bullied on the phone. So he is definitely leaving out many parts on why my dad even had a phone conversation with him. But to further elaborate, these are days after the breakup and me coping with speaking about the situation to myself without using his name. Part 1 of Dating a Narcissist. When we first met each other, I came across his live, and I interacted with his live. I didn't know at the time, but as time went by, he told me that he was inebriated in that specific live. He was sad in that live, and I happened to be there at the right time for him. I felt like we both needed each other at the time. We both started to get to know each other off social media. At first, it started off with, how can I contact brands? Because he really wanted to explore with being able to communicate with brands and get deals with them. And because prior I had done business with certain brands, I was trying to put them on. To two, a weekend, I love you. At first, I was kind of shocked that he told me he loved me so soon because he already wanted to tell the world that he wanted me to be his girlfriend. But I felt like we were just getting to know each other and we had just met in the duration of a month. So I told him, when and if we see each other at this con coming up, I would consider being his girlfriend. Because I wanted to be sure that we could be able to see each other. Eventually, at the time of the con coming up, I was sure that I would have my own room, but on short notice, he asked me if he could share a room with me. At first, I was hesitant because we're still getting to know each other. And I didn't necessarily want to share a room with him. But then he invited his brother. And me being a nice person, knowing he really wanted to go to this con so bad, I said, sure, you and your brother can crash at my room, since it's just me. While paying for my room in those days, he gets to the state, I have to pick him up at the airport. I'm talking Ubers on top of Ubers, wherever we wanted to go. Then later I found out he had no money in that state at all. So the dates he promised that we would go on were canceled. I had to pay for his food and his brother's food. And although he probably found this a little bit embarrassing, I was happier knowing that, hey, I get to hang out with someone. And he seemed like a really chill person. So when he asked me to be his girlfriend, I said yes. He seemed really humble. After the con was over and we went our separate ways, we had ventured on long-distance dating. We honestly didn't know when we would see each other again. But I knew if I wanted to, I told myself if I ever was in love with someone, I would make the effort to see them. But he couldn't tell me when he wanted to see me. And at this point, we're dating. We're talking. We're playing video games, watching movies. Doing all these things long distance couples do. All while sharing more of his family trauma and lore and things that he went through and stuff. He also shared with me that he was financially struggling, so I would buy him food. And at this point in time, we were only dating officially a month after it turned August, my birthday month. And we were reminiscing on the things that we did while we were in Texas together. I was getting very eager to know when I was going to be able to see my boyfriend again. But it seemed like he was content with knowing that even though we were long distance dating, he didn't want to put in the effort to try to see me. So I took matters into my own hands. I wanted to try to see him in his state. But So I took matters into my own hands. I wanted to try to see him in Baltimore, his state. But there was a miscommunication. I didn't tell my parents I was dating anyone. And I have open lines of communication with my parents. They know everything. So they knew something was off when I was happier than usual and taking trips, not letting them know much. I eventually told them that I was in a relationship. They were happy for me. They also felt if I wanted to travel to his state, that there should be someone to know that I'm going there for my own safety. Someone that he knew that could help the both of us if something were to happen to us. Because my dad has 3 daughters. He just wants us to all be safe. Eventually, he told his mom that we were in a relationship. He doesn't have the best relationship with his parents. He had a traumatic experience with abuse. So he felt like keeping his wins to himself. Eventually, having a girlfriend was necessary. He had a traumatic experience with abuse. So he felt keeping his wins to himself, especially having a girlfriend, was necessary because they would find a way to use it against him. So I could understand that. But because my parents were more supportive and wanted to be involved in our relationship, they helped me plan trips for him to come see us. They wanted to meet him. We all decided that we would see each other in December. It's August. That was like 5 months away. I didn't know how we were going to hold on, but we did. There were a lot of arguments, but we got through all of them. All while trying to save for a trip. Ultimately, I felt like I was obligated to find There were a lot of arguments. We got through all of them. I was trying to save for a trip because ultimately I felt like it was my obligation. Okay. We all decided that we would see each other in December. It's August. That was 5 months away. I didn't know how we were going to hold on, but we did. There were a lot of arguments, but we got through all of them. While I'm trying to save for trips, because ultimately I felt I was obligated to finance most of them, since I had already been that person in his life, in our relationship, financing everything. His sister moved to Florida in June, and he told me he was sad about it. So I basically planned a trip based around us seeing each other and then seeing her. We live in 2 different cities. So I bought a flight for him to come here and then to see her. All he had to do was buy his flight home. Putting a hold in the timeline of our story, there were a lot of questionable things that he did in the process of us dating. One of the incidents that didn't sit well with me is when he would ask me about my creator friends and how he could get in contact with them. But ultimately, the only reason I'm friends with certain creators is because we've known each other for some time and we support each other. But I should have knew when he got upset about this one interaction with his friend. So his friend went to Universal. His friend is a creator. He met another creator there, which I was mutuals with. His friend was really excited that he kind of had a crush on her and wanted to know if she was single. My boyfriend at the time went out his way to ask if my mutual was in a relationship or not. Mind you, if you ever have creator friends, sometimes you guys are friends on a surface level. Like you support each other, but you don't know each other's personal business. I just kind of felt that information was invasive, and I wouldn't have known that information. Even if I did know that information, I wouldn't want to give that information out because it's not my information to tell. And I feel like if I was friends with someone too, I wouldn't want them to tell my business as well. Because I gave that response, he got really mad. He wanted me to go out my way to ask her, is she in a relationship? I'm trying to help my boy out. And I was like, dude, I have no idea if she's in a relationship. And it's not my place to tell her. And it's not my place to tell you about her business. She's very known. Beautiful cosplayer. From Philly. He got really mad with me. And I almost broke up with him. Because I was like, oh my goodness, no, that's invasive. And it's wrong to tell other people's business. There was another incident where he was flirting with this girl at his job. A guest, because he works at Target. And she asked for his number, and he said, sorry, I'm in a relationship. But before he told me about the interaction prior, he said, is it okay for people to have a flirty personality and still be in a relationship? And me wanting to dig for a response from him, I jokingly said, yes, it's okay to be flirty in a relationship. When genuinely, that's not how I feel. I feel like if you're in a relationship and you have a flirty bone in your body and it's not for the person that you're with, then you should be single. Then he tried to justify it by saying that's just how some people are. And saying that he has a flirty personality. And then he told me about the interaction. Then I backpedaled completely. And I said, I'm glad that's how you feel. But I can't be with someone like that. Because if you flirt with someone while being in a relationship, you're letting the other person know that you seem available. So the interaction with that girl asking for his number, he made it seem to her that he was available based off of how he was responding to her. I hung up the phone. I would always be on the phone with him throughout his entire shifts. He's not allowed to be on the phone. But because he literally wouldn't let me do anything in my life, like make content or just like, he made everything about himself. I hung up the phone. He came back a few hours later, after his shift. He came back a few hours later after talking to a trusted team lead of his. And his team lead said the same thing I was saying. So yes, he apologized, but it definitely made me see him differently. When I tell you, I felt like a side character in his life, and I was only living life and doing things for him, and it was never ever about me. I would be on the phone with this man all times a day while he's at work. But when he wanted to go do his content, that's when he would break off conversation, go do that. If I wanted to go break up conversation to go do the things that I need to do, then it was like, well, I can be there for you. I have to be by myself for those processes. He just was really clingy. Now we're starting to get into current times. As of January, February, March of 2024. After we saw each other in December, we were very happy and we wanted to see each other again. We spent almost 2 weeks together and we had such a great time. I was trying to figure out when we could do it again. And although he was already showing prior that he was okay with long distance dating and not making an effort to try to see me unless I bought his ticket for things, is the only way he would make an effort to come see me. But even when he wanted me to come to his state of Baltimore, he never offered to buy my ticket. Not once was he trying to buy my ticket. It was always, buy your ticket here, come see me. Buy us a room so I can stay there for a few days with you. So I just felt like, yes, our relationship, I financially kept us up. But he couldn't even support me emotionally when I would let him know that the way that he thinks about things were wrong. He got to meet his sister again. It was amazing. I bought our tickets to see her. We took pictures together. We all kind of bonded. I think I decided on wanting to be able to see him in February because that's when I think I decided on wanting to see him in February because that's when Valentine's was, and I never had a Valentine or a boyfriend on Valentine's Day. But he was pushing to want to see me in June. Mind you, January to June is 6 months from now. And that he claimed that his stepdad was going to kick him out during that month. So he was trying to figure out a living situation. And I did feel kind of bad, but I live with my parents. And I didn't know how I felt about us dating almost 5 months now. And he already wanted me to move in with him somewhere. You can learn a lot about a person when you move in with them. I was learning a lot about him when we were staying together in different resorts. So ultimately, me trying to be a good person, I was trying to help him financially figure out how to run his funds on the idea of moving, even if it wasn't with me, but somewhere where he would be out of a toxic household. And he felt necessary that he would need to leave soon and stay with me. After comforting him and letting him know that everything was going to be all right and that I loved him still, because even making these part series, I still do love him. That same day, February 14th. Later that night, we went on another date, and we went 50-50 on it. We got back to our room, and we watched movies and shows, played video games, and then he proposed to me, and I said yes. In that moment, I was shocked. I didn't know that he went out his way to buy a ring that was beautiful, and I said yes because I loved him. And honestly, I didn't know that everything that I was doing paid off with him, promising that he would marry me and be with me forever. I was very emotional, and I was so happy, and I kept that ring on every day. The next day, February 15th, he had to go back home. We dropped him off at the airport, and I told my parents I was getting married. They were so happy for me. They were already thinking of ways that can help plan this wedding, and we were waiting for him to get home so we can all talk about it ultimately. We started telling everyone that we know, love, and trust we were getting married. And I honestly knew that one day someone would see my worth and want to protect me as a person. And I honestly knew that one day someone would see my worth and want to protect me as a person emotionally and physically. And I thought that that day had come. My parents had already paid for a wedding planner. They started planning things that we enjoy, but I knew something was off when he didn't want to tell his own parents that he was getting married. I felt like that would be a win, like I'm leaving your house. But he stayed under their roof. He stayed under their roof. He told everyone else but them, and me and my parents were worried that if he didn't eventually tell them while staying under their roof, they would find that as a reason to kick him out. My parents were happy with love and open arms to invite them to live with us for a little. My parents were happy with open arms to invite him to live with us for a little, just so we can save enough money to move out. In the back of my head, I did feel like things were being rushed, but I also knew that I loved him, and he said that he loved me. Maybe he saw a great opportunity to choose a different path in his life, to not be in a toxic situation at his house, and to be with someone that loved him. So I was all ears, helping him get credit cards, brand deals, help him start his new life with me together. I felt like I was playing the role of a wife, but I already wasn't a wife. I remember months before any of this, I would jokingly say, like, if you put a ring on it. I didn't know that he would actually do it. In the midst of us planning this wedding, he felt left out and he didn't know certain details. He wanted to be included. My parents were funding all of this, and we asked if anyone wanted to help out with anything like his parents, but he still didn't tell them. My parents set us both down and came up with a plan on how we were going to get married and when we were going to get married. He agreed with all the plans. So it was settled, and we had a date. And we sent invitations. They were all excited. They were calling off of work. We even worked out a plan with the resort to get cheaper rooms. And they made a website for everyone to book from. My parents were putting in a lot of effort to make sure that me and him were happy and paying what was necessary. When he finally told his parents he was getting married, they seemed happy, but they didn't give him the response that he wanted. Oddly, his parents never really cared about what happened in his life. They never asked him how his day was. They never went out his way to speak to them. He never went out his way to speak to them, and they wouldn't go out their way to speak to him. So ultimately, he felt like he didn't have the support that he needed. He had the support of his friends, his brother and sister, his real dad. But it just wasn't enough. I wasn't enough to help him not think about his situations, even if I went out my way to do all that I could to help him not think about these things. I would constantly remind him that when two people are getting married, it's about us and not them. And that he shouldn't give energy to people that don't reciprocate it back. I reminded him that he was already going to move out, and he didn't have to deal with them anymore. He's told me multiple times that when he got rich and famous one day, he would never speak to them again. While planning this wedding, it was very stressful for both of us because he wanted all creative control, and he felt that nothing was being based around him. When I made the colors of our wedding his favorite color, I felt like I was always tending to him and what he wanted, and the world was only about him in his day. I remember early on in our relationship, he would only talk more about himself, and I had to step up and let him know, like, hey, like, you didn't even ask me about my day or care, and it kind of hurt my feelings. And he let me know that I could talk, and it's not just about me, but it continued to be about him. Ultimately, I wasn't enough to help him through his trauma and the issues in his life. Because he wasn't finding safer ways to get through them. He would hurt himself. I can't hear you. I still can't hear you. I said I love you. I love you too. Is my love enough for you? Yeah. Are you sure? I'm trying here. I don't have that many materials. And I don't know if you guys will notice, but literally 3 days after my last recording on talking about it, we ended up talking again, and we exchange I love yous, and we start to try to work on our relationship again.